I'll tell you what I think one of the problems is. A lot of conservatives seem to think that Donald Trump needed to do all the work for him. And not just conservatives. Conservatives had been the one paying attention to this more than liberals were. Like, you know, in the story you told, you were kind of unaware of what's going on. I told a similar story in 2014. Conservatives have seen this and have been railing on it for some time. Then moderates got roped in, and now many liberals, people like Barry Weiss, for instance, are complaining about what happened at the New York Times. And you have anti-woke leftists even now criticizing the establishment and what they call neoliberalism. The problem is a lot of conservatives thought Donald Trump was the answer. I'm not saying every single one, or at least they thought Trump would be some kind of assistance. And they're not entirely wrong. Trump did come in, and he did eventually sign, enact this executive order. But it took James Lindsay and Christopher Rufo going on, shows, Christopher Rufo going on Tucker Carlson and saying this is a problem for Trump to enact this, in the last several months of office. The issue is these government agencies had been doing absolutely racist practices. In one instance, there was there was a certain laboratory sent all the white people on a retreat to talk about whiteness and white privilege and why it's, bad and things like that. We've seen many stories like that. Christopher Rufo documents all of these, and there's a bunch of examples. Every single one of those people needed to file a lawsuit. They needed to do what you are doing right now. So what ends up happening is we have years of this. And we have many people complaining about it. But where are the people actually filing the suits, challenging these institutions on, was it Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act? You cannot discriminate on the basis of race and gender and national origin and things like that. When I saw Donald Trump was enacting this executive order, I thought to myself, he shouldn't have to do this. It's already illegal. It's interesting. We had a leftist on this show who argued that Trump was banning, free speech and that it was wrong to do this. And I'm like, it's already illegal to do these programs. You cannot take a bunch of white people off to a retreat and tell them white people are bad. That violates the law. The law says race. The law doesn't say marginalized groups. You can argue the spirit or the intent, but it doesn't matter. We have these laws for a reason. Joe Biden has come in, rescinded the executive order, and it doesn't change the fact it's still illegal. That means every single person who works in the government, works in these universities, or is affected by the wokeness needs to be filing a lawsuit today against these institutions for what they're doing. Why aren't they doing it?
Well, we talked about money.
That's true.
That's a huge thing. I mean, really, it's even before that. The question is why. I mean, I feel like more people are speaking out, but I mean, people don't even talk about it, let alone file a lawsuit. I mean, that's a big step. That's a commitment. And litigation is difficult.
Definitely.
We do have some other lawsuits going on in this country, though. We have Clark v. Democracy Prep in Nevada, which is a school case. It's a K through 12 charter school. Gabrielle's son is a senior, and he was forced. I mean, they said they would give him a D- if he didn't profess his
Is this the biracial?
Yes.
Student? So we actually have.
He looks white. He's like you.
Well, there's a really funny thing about that. Whether I'm white appearing or not depends on the race of the individual. No joke. So in my experience, I've been called Hispanic more than anything else. Latino. I had a guy at Occupy Wall Street refer to me as his Puerto Rican brother. And I'm like, bro, I'm not Hispanic. I mean, I know the tiny bit of Spanish because I grew up in Chicago. But I was in Anaheim, and I had the guys from Telemundo walk up to me speaking Spanish, just assuming I was, Latino to a certain extent. And so it really is in the eye of the beholder. The funny thing is, if I agree with the woke, all of a sudden they can see that I'm not white. And they say, see, it's because you understand. If I disagree with them, they say, you're white. That's the name of the game.
Yeah, because it's not really about skin color, is it? It's about politics.
Yeah, it's about whether you are in the cult or not. So let me jump to this story. We have this from the Atlanta Black Star. They say black mom sues school after she says biracial son received failing grade in sociology class for refusing to confess his white dominance. A black mom is suing her biracial son's Nevada charter school after she claims he received a failing grade for refusing to link aspects of his identity to oppression and dominance in a sociology class. Gabrielle Clark and her son William Clark filed a suit in U.S. District Court of Nevada against public charter school Democracy Prep Agassi campus in Vegas on December 22nd, alleging a violation of constitutional free speech and due process rights. William Clark claims that in that class, Sociology of Change, taught by Catherine Bass, who was named as a defendant in the suit, he was harassed and punished for refusing to attach derogatory labels to aspects of his identity. Clark, whose deceased father was white, is generally regarded as white by his peers, according to the complaint, and has green eyes and blondish hair. The far-right advocacy group International Organization for the Family, which has been tracking the case closely, reports that a U.S. District Court judge said at a February 22nd temporary restraining order hearing, "I think William is likely to succeed on the merits of his compelled speech claims," saying that the defendants will have to find a way to justify the critical race theory curriculum under a strict scrutiny test, adding, "That's a very high bar to meet." In the class taught by Bass, a self-described white Irish American citizen, Clark was allegedly forced to reveal his race, gender, sexual and religious identities and attach labels to the identities, which the lawsuit claims violated his right to privacy. An instructional slide included in court documents displays dominant groups in American culture as white, male, middle upper class, heterosexual, and Protestant Christian, while everyone else is categorized as submissive. Labels like white are associated by Bass with privilege, while words like female and working class are associated with oppressive. It's really twisted, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a particularly egregious, but this is happening all over the place, and Gabrielle Clark stood up and said, no thanks, I'm not going to do this. I was given a similar, one of my colleagues was like offered to help educate me, and I took her up on it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have an open mind. And she handed me a worksheet, and it did have the oppressed, it was 2 columns, oppressed, and it was dominant group and subordinated group. And the dominant group only had like one thing, like race was white, gender, male, religion, Christian, and then over here you had all like everybody else in the entire world. And I was like, wow. That was very reductionist view of the world, but it's very similar to what William experienced. And I think he was the only white presenting person in his class too, which made it especially.
Have you ever taken the privilege test? Where it's like a slider bar and it's like, how white are you? How Christian are you? How old are you?
What's the intersectionality score?
Yeah,
thing?
Something like that. And then it's
Online.
like, you are 74 points privileged out of 100. You are very privileged or whatever.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're doing. Have you ever seen that image of the 3 people staying at the fence for the equality versus equity?
Of course.
The amazing thing about that is its manipulation. It's the insidiousness of it, where they show that to children and they explain very simply, hey, we can give, one of the boxes from the tall guy to the short guy so they can all see, right? Well, that's simple. It makes sense. But what happens when you're dealing with race and orientation and national origin and religion? It's impossible to quantify how standing on top of religion allows you to see a baseball game. So these are the kinds of manipulative tactics they use where you kind of understand it. But here's what I truly despise about this. That equality versus equity argument is about wealth, not race. Everyone who gets access to a box to stand on is their access to resources. Giving the shorter person 2 boxes is giving them access to resources to help them. The argument that we actually need to be having is about class issues. Well, they do mention working class and middle upper class as part of the oppression scale. But when they make everything about your race, that in my opinion, is meant to disrupt actual, what's the right word for it? I guess social justice, real social justice. Oprah all of a sudden becomes oppressed. She's a billionaire. And then a white homeless veteran is now an oppressor because he's white.
Yeah, it's like saying Oprah Winfrey has more in common with somebody living in, is it East?
Like the Marcy Projects in New York.
Yeah, than a wealthy white person. I mean, clearly that's a false.
But that's the kind of narrative they use. Like they used it with Serena Williams when she had. So she's the famous tennis player. When she had a bout of rage. With all due respect, she got angry and she like bounced her tennis racket or something like that. They penalized her for it. And then there was this big narrative that the only reason they did it was because she was a black woman and that they were basically attacking her as the trope of the angry black woman, as opposed to the fact that she just acted out in violation of the rules. And to act like one of the most famous, celebrated, and wealthy athletes in the world is in any way oppressed is just shockingly, I don't know, ignorant in my opinion. But I think it's part of the weaponization that we see from a lot of people. I mean, heaven forbid, there's a large push towards, stripping away the resources of corrupt politicians who somehow make millions of dollars off of their office when they're getting a salary for $174,000 a year and then all of a sudden become worth $50 million or $5 million or whatever. They don't want you to come after them. So they'll say, hey, don't look at me. It's the white guy. Go yell at that guy in the gutter who's, shoveling garbage for a living. He's the real oppressor. They teach it in schools.
Just like Jackie Blair is the dining person who was falsely accused is the real oppressor.
Yeah, the janitor. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.